Hello and welcome to a special episode of On the Bench. On the show today, we'll be bringing you Rob's full interview with former Mariner and England manager Graham Taylor from when he visited Blundell Park in April. It's a bit of a trip down memory lane for Graham as he took a walk around the ground with Rob, so take a look at this.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest on the show this week. He has a fond association with Lincolnshire football, spending time here at Blundell Park as club captain before going on to enjoy a successful career in club management. Well, everyone here at Blundell Park at Grimsby Town is delighted to have him back in the county. Former Mariner, former England football manager, Graham Taylor. Graham, welcome.
Thank you very much.
How does it feel to be back on your old stamping ground?
Well, it always is special, isn't it? I mean, this is your first, or my first professional football club. Came here as a 17-year-old boy, left school when taking A-levels in the first year sixth form. Headmaster not very happy with me at all. But we came here and it's 1962, I think it was, and it started then for me my professional football career.
What about the place? Has it changed much?
Not as I'm looking here. I remember this stand as that, and certainly down there, the players' entrance to the dressing rooms. Turn to the right. On your left-hand side, as you go through, will be the visitors' dressing room, and then you go straight on ahead, and there's the home team dressing room. I guess it hasn't changed.
We'll go down and have a look in a moment. Before we go in there, lovely evening, much talk about club ground changing and so on and so forth, but what are the sort of characteristics that are lost forever when you go away from a club and a ground like this?
First of all, when you have a ground like this, you have the closeness of the supporters. I'm not saying that other grounds don't have them, but if you look round, everybody, wherever they are, the pitch is just there. So as players, you know, if you're in the position that we're in here, halfway line and what have you, yeah, you're near the manager's dugout, so you probably will get an earful if you're not playing so well. But basically, you're near the supporters, so there's that feeling that you're in this together. And you find that at clubs that haven't got massive big stands. If you've got massive big stands, yeah, of course you have a lot of noise and that, but there's a closeness to these kind of grounds, and you feel that the supporters are with you, and they will be, providing you're winning.
Shall we have a walk down the tunnel?
Yeah, I arrived really through Tim Ward, who was the manager, and offered me a contract to come here. And then before I came here, he'd left and signed for Derby County as their manager. So everybody talks about managers leaving. My first manager signed me, or when I say signed me, we agreed for me to sign. And then, to be fair to him, he let me know that Derby County had approached him and he was likely to go and he would take me to Derby, but he felt himself that having committed myself and said I would sign for Grimsby, and he had told the board that I was going to do, that I should still sign, and so that's what I did. But it's quite an experience to have a manager, and before you've even had one day's training, he's gone.
So going back down here, what are your fondest memories of running out here at Blundell Park?
Well, I think it was always the fact that, and particularly when you know, I was the captain, you were leading your team out in front of your supporters, and what you had to do, what was very much in your mind. This was a game where you had to give of your best, and you also were looking forward to a win. It always is. It's the same now, really. You know, obviously everybody wants to win and what have you, but winning your home games is very important.
You can almost smell the atmosphere in here, can't you?
Yeah. Now that, can I stop here?
Yeah.
Because that says no smoking down here. That, I'm pretty certain, used to be the away team dressing room. Whether it is now or not, I don't know. But if it is, that's where, when I first came, I went to get changed.
Really?
Because the first team squad, and I was just joining as a 17-year-old, so the first team squad changed in the home team dressing room, and the rest of us, we were put into the away team dressing room. And that was the door that we went into, and I got changed in there. So the first time that I actually trained with Grimsby Town as a full-time professional.
That's where it was?
That was in that room.
Oh, fancy that. Yeah. So changes already, you're seeing?
Yeah, yeah.
So as we go through here.
Yeah. I was a Scunthorpe lad. I was never going to sign for Scunthorpe because my father was the local sports reporter for the Scunthorpe Evening Telegraph. And you're not going to be in any position, are you, if you're playing and he's reporting on the game. You know, if he reports well about you, it's only because you're his son. If he reports badly about you, then what sort of father is he? So I was never going to sign for my hometown. Here, this was the staff room. This is where George Higgins, who was the trainer, first class, I owe George a lot, because I was not a fullback when I joined the club. They turned me into a fullback. I'm not so certain that that was the best thing, but they did. And George Higgins was a fullback in his playing career, and he helped me a great deal. But in there, the staff used to get changed.
All right. It's like nobody's going in there now. It's
No.
locked up completely.
And
So here we are.
This is it. This is the first team dressing room, and it looks very, very similar to what it was when I was here, which I don't know is whether that's a compliment or not. That is different. That certainly is different. That you used to go straight out the door, and behind that door, when you went out, there was you used to go up some stairs, and it's where they kept your kit, because you used to have your kit, and of course afterwards training used to be cleaned and washed for the following day, and that was kept out there, and you used to go and collect it, and you had to get here early to make sure you got some of the best kit, because in those days you would just had to rely on getting some decent kit. I'm talking about training kit.
Really?
And believe me, some of the training kit, there was a lot of questions to be asked about it.
Probably a lot of fans, it's the first chance they've had to look behind the scenes, might be surprised. We see the inside of many dressing rooms these days with Sky and so forth, and often they're bigger, they're grander, entertaining some of the top Premier League sides.
Yeah, I have to say this, that I wouldn't have thought all those years ago, when I was a player at Grimsby, that I would come back so many years later and see that very little has changed as regards dressing room. The bathroom was in here. Here it is, look. It's now showers. But at this time, if we can come in, toilet all against it. This here, these weren't in. They've set, you see, you get showered. This was a communal bath. Need I say anything more?
No, you needn't say any more.
Need I say anything more about that? Yeah.
Who'd have thought we'd be talking to Graham Taylor on the bench in the showers at Blundell Park. Let's talk about the Mariners this season, knocking on the door of the Football League.
Yeah.
How do you rate the job that Paul Hurst has done this season?
You know, it's fine because you're in a position, they're in a decent position in the conference. Nobody actually wants to be in the conference. As a football like when you get relegated into it, nobody wants to be. Getting out of it isn't as easy as people think it is. And I look and follow their results in as much as I can. You know, both Lincoln, my former club, and Grimsby are now in the conference. I have to say this to the camera, that's not my fault at all, just so you know. But basically, you want them out of it. You want them to come back into the league. And it's not easy. It's not as easy as people think it should be. And of course, the money that comes into the game goes into Football Association, Football League, Premier League, they give but it doesn't come down into the conference. Because that money is meant for Football League sides, it's meant for Premier League sides, and unfortunately, none of the money filters down into the conference. So if you get relegated into it, the quicker you can get out of it, the better.
From experience, what are the day-to-day real challenges that a young manager faces in the lower leagues, such as Paul Hurst?
Well, he actually faces exactly what most managers now face, much more than they did, in as much that you've got to get your results, and if you don't get your results, you'll get the sack. I know that sounds very brutal the way I've said it, but that's what it is. It's as brutal as that. Now, people say, well, of course, managers are responsible for the results, etc. Well, yes, they have to. That is the responsibility to create a winning side. But you get a winning side when your players are playing well, when they're doing things. The manager never kicks the ball on a match day. And I'm not making excuses for him because he has to take the responsibility for the results. But when the actual match comes, his job is to prepare the players as best as he can to enable them to be able to get a win. But basically, it's the players that have to take that determination, that confidence, that ability, and put it into place on the pitch. The manager doesn't cross the line at all. I'll tell you what, and it may be interesting, but it's the truth, is that I'd been made the captain, I'd come through the side as a captain, and players were being signed, And one of the players told me how much money he was on, and it was 2.5 times as much as I was on. And whether it's right or wrong, I just felt, here am I, captain of the side, I've been made the captain, and people are being 2.5 times more than myself. And I went in to see the manager at the time, Bill Harvey, and you know, there was no going to be any improvement. So I thought, well, I'm not going to stay if that's how I'm going to be treated behind. Now, people might say, was it all about money in that sense? To a degree it was, but Bill and I never really got on. I was the captain of the side, and Bill treated me. I was also taking a coaching qualification to get a full badge, and he used to take the mickey out of me in front of the players. You know, he used to say something, then he'd say, what does the top coach in England feel? And I didn't like that approach. So I asked for a transfer and moved to Lincoln City. I went into Lincoln, and I mean, I think I scored 2 goals in my career, and on my debut against Newport County for Lincoln, I scored 1 of them. So they thought, this is a good full-back, he scores goals. No, I didn't. I was a defender, I defended. But in terms of that, it's where my managerial career started. It was the biggest disappointment. I've said so many times, I get bored saying, but it will be only me that carries non-qualification through to my grave.
Graham, you mentioned Lincoln City. How disappointing is it to see their season petering out into mediocrity just down the A46, having spent so much time there as a successful manager?
Well, it is. I mean, as I've said with both of Grimsby and Lincoln, you watch them. The last thing that you want your sides to be is out of the Football League. Now, I don't in any shape or form have a go at the conference because of this. That is what the life is about now. If you finish the bottom of your table and you're relegated into the conference. You've got to get out of it. You've got to get out of it. And that is not easy. I'm not even suggesting that it's an easy thing to do, but that is what's got to happen. Otherwise, you face the prospect of being a nothing club. Because if you don't get out of it in a number of years, people forget about you. Because whatever they say, and I'm not being unkind to the conference, yes, people such as myself and others will read, will see what the club's doing, but the majority of people, what's the conference? And I'm not being unkind to them, but that is what you've gone out of the league. You've gone out of the Football League, and people soon forget you. You learn from every manager. You know, there's no doubt about it. Whilst I may have said about Bill Harvey being like that, you learn from it that, you know, it may be that I don't want to be like that. Well, you know, it wasn't something that I thought was going to make, it certainly didn't make me feel that I was wanted. And what can you say if the manager is consistently taking the mickey out of your coaching qualifications? Do you know what I mean? That's what I disliked a lot, because he would say things like that. He'd be out there talking, oh, come on, let's have the top coach in England tell us what he thinks. And whilst people might laugh at it, even the players had stopped laughing by then.
Hey, when you talk about England very quickly, how excitable a time should it be now for England fans compared with recent years?
I thought you was going to say compared to your time.
No, I was careful not to say that.
I think you've always got to look in a positive fashion as much as you can say. I mean, it was the biggest disappointment. I've said so many times, I get bored saying, but it will be only me that carries non-qualification through to my grave. I'll take it into my grave. It was a very, very difficult period of time for myself. There's no doubt about it. The thing that I'm proud, if I have any reason for proud, I stayed in this country. I didn't go abroad, and I resurrected my managerial career at club level in this country. And from that time on, England managers have gone back to club level, like Terry Venables did so, you know, then Steve McLaren. And I think that's it. If you judge good enough to be the manager of the England side, then surely you're good enough to be manager of a club. It shouldn't end your career. You soon learn as a manager, the players win the game, you lose them. You know what I mean? So the object really is to make sure that the players will win the game for you. And you've got to create a knowledge of your players. You've got to treat your players as you think is the right way. Certainly, we started it at Lincoln and continued it at Watford, we insisted that the players played a part in making them community clubs. The people, your supporters, come and pay to watch you play, do your work if you think, on a Saturday, but basically they never see you apart from that. And so what we started to do at Lincoln was to take the players to where our supporters were working. And we used to find a day a week or something like that, or an afternoon or a thing to do that. And that increased a lot at Watford, where we created a bond between the supporters, our supporters, and the football club and ourselves. So that if, for instance, like if you go to Watford and go on and you have John Barnes there, if suddenly, you know, you're at work yourself and there's a visit by the Watford footballers, which including John Barnes, and he sits and talks to you, when you go to the game the following Saturday, the last thing you're going to do is boo John Barnes. So there's a community. And that started for me at Lincoln. There were special times because this was my first football club. It was where I had to learn. We're sitting in the dressing room as it was then. And as a left back, I was made into a full back. I was an inside forward wing half when I first joined the club, and they made me into a left back. And I used to sit round about where you were there when we were changing for games. But the players, I've already met some of them, and yeah, special times. There are always special times, really, in terms, and where I've been fortunate, and they've been fortunate, really, is that to have a job as a professional footballer isn't really a job. It's just, you know, you're fit, you're fit, and you're fitter than most of the people because of your job. And you're playing football, which everybody is interested in, and you've got supporters behind you. And, you know, what more can you ask for? It's tremendous. And nowadays, if at the top level, the kind of money that the players can earn, and can I say this first of all, I'm never one to criticise that, because all of us, if we were footballers, we'd take the money that was offered to us. So it's a fantastic living. The only thing that I would say, in my time, when you came to 30, 31, 32, your career was over, and you hadn't earned enough money so that you could retire. You had to find another job at 31, 32 years of age. That wasn't always easy for certain players. Nowadays, the amount of money that players are paid, I don't think it's a good thing, because some of them can retire from everything at 32, 33. Because if they've looked after their money, they've got enough money in the bank to see them through the rest of their life, which I don't think is really all that good, because at that particular age, it's not retirement age, surely.
And how near is an England side to winning a major tournament?
I think we'll have to wait and see. I'm not being negative in this fashion, but I think we'll have to wait and see, because for some reason, and I can't even now place my finger on the reason, players over the years have found it hard to perform at tournament level. You know, as we know they can perform, they're playing the best, and what we found. So you need to get that, you see, you need to get a right mentality going right through the squad of players. One thing that I would say is that the players that make up the England squad, not one of them is used to being a substitute. Not one of them is used to not playing in the first team. So you're not just talking about the 11 players that play for England, you're talking about the full squad. And when the manager, Roy in this particular, names his side, so he names his 11, but there's 7 or 8 of those people who are never not in the first team at the club level. And it's a strange experience for them. Now, those people are vitally important. Those players who are not playing in the build-up to the game, they are vitally important in creating and helping to maintain a kind of preparation for the game and a positiveness. But sometimes that can be difficult for those players, because they're not used to either sitting on the bench as a substitute or not being in the squad at all. So you've got personality to make sure that you know how to handle that.
Graham, it's a pleasure meeting you here at Blundell Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Rob. Now, joining me in the studio to reflect on that interview are Tony Jameson-Allen from the Sporting Memories Network and Dan Barker, our resident pundit. Now, Tony, you were at the event. How was it?
It was a fabulous evening. Mariners Trust very kindly invited me along to be part of it. I think there was about 160 people in the room, and I was fortunate to sit alongside Graham all evening and listen to some fantastic stories that he told. He spoke very fondly about his time at Blundell Park, and he shared some brilliant memories of both his time as a player but also as a manager as well.
Yeah, and obviously it's like we said, it's going down memory lane for him. Do you think there's a lot changed? You sat next to him all night, so he must have been talking to you about Blundell Park and his memories from there.
Yeah, I mean, he did talk about the way the game's changed and how once defenders have passed the ball 6 times to each other without moving forward, he tends to switch the TV off now. But he talked fondly about, you know, his time as a player and as a manager. But he also shared some brilliant memories about England's victory in the World Cup in 1966. It was quite fascinating, really, because Graham was actually undertaking his coaching badges at Lilleshall during the tournament, so he didn't really watch much of it. So his actual memories of that was really making his first steps towards management after his playing career.
Do you think that shaped his career quite a lot, or?
I think he spoke a lot about one particular manager that he'd played under, who he'd learnt an awful lot from, and really kind of focused his mind as to if he was going to be a manager, that was the way and the approach that he'd take forwards.
Oh, that's great. So he's got a style, obviously, from that inspiration.
Yeah, and
great.
did a lot of learning.
Brilliant. And Dan, obviously you've got some memories of Graham as a player and as a manager. Is there anything that stands out?
I'm obviously a little bit too young to remember his playing days. One story I do know about Graham Taylor is the fact he used to live next door to my nana's sister, my Auntie Pat.
Big up Auntie Pat.
In Young Place in Cleethorpes. But my main memories of Graham Taylor was obviously England manager, bit of a disastrous spell really, in charge of the national team. Yeah. And obviously when he took Watford to the Premier League in 1999 as well.
Great. And Tony, just quickly, you've got this signed picture from Graham, haven't you? So it's the...
Yeah, every star that we interview who shares memories very kindly puts the signature to it, and that page is particularly special. And there's a number of people who have chosen not to sign that because it's just so special. But
so
to get Graham,
picture?
Bobby Moore with the World Cup, and Graham very kindly put his signature next to it.
That's great, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this show. So thank you very much to Dan and Tony in the studio, and to Rob and Graham for the interview, and thank you to Grimsby Town for allowing us to come along to film at Blundell Park. We'll be back next week for more local sport discussion, so we'll see you then. Goodbye.